Coming up in this week's Torah Pearls.
What does the rebellious son of Deuteronomy 21 have to do with the Gospels?
Does the Torah permit rape in certain circumstances?
The prolonging of days is a blessing in the Torah associated with the honor of parents and one other law. What law is that?
The tassels on the corners of your garments, the tzitzit, were they originally a fashion statement before they were a religious one?
All right, Jono, we better jump in. This is a big one.
Let's do it. G'day, dear viewers, and thank you for your company once again here on truth2u.org. That's truth number 2, letter U.org. I am Jono Vandor, and joining me from the Horeb Institute in Louisiana is, of course, Ross K. Nichols, the author of the Moses Scroll. G'day, mate.
Hello, Jono. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you, my friend. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom, by the way.
And Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Time for Season 3 of Torah Pills, brought to you by Tanakh Tours, TanakhTours.com. We are hoping to get there again back in Israel. November 2026 is what we're aiming for, and we will keep you informed as that comes together. This week, we are in Torah portion Ki Tetze, and that is...
that's a big one. That's what that is.
It's a mixed bag, isn't it, Ross? It's a bit of a mixed bag.
It is incredibly full and varied. Let's just say full and varied.
Well, Deuteronomy chapter 21 from verse 10 and on. And we do, of course, have our AI critical scholar, Ezra. Ezra, will you kick us off with an academic overview, please?
Welcome back to Torah Pearls. Today, we're diving into Ki Tetze, a dense portion packed with more laws than any other in the Torah. From a scholarly standpoint, this section is a prime example of the Deuteronomic Code at work, where older covenant code laws are reinterpreted to fit a centralized monarchic society. We're in the thick of the second law collection of Deuteronomy, often seen by text critics as a separate legal corpus with clear editorial shaping. You'll notice repeated concerns with social justice, protection of the vulnerable, and community purity, but also legal revisions that suggest a later historical setting, likely during or after the reforms of Josiah. These chapters reflect not just moral guidance, but real political and social restructuring. And while they might read like scattered regulations, they actually reveal a consistent theological vision: Israel as a holy society, shaped by covenant fidelity and communal responsibility. Let's dig in.
The legal revisions that suggest a later historical setting, likely during or after the reforms of Josiah. That's interesting. I noticed that I do believe that both Richard Elliott Freeman and Baden consider this to be the Deuteronomist. I don't know that there is any sort of claim to a redactor here, except for one verse which may pop up in our Torah portion here. We'll talk about that when we get there. But there are some interesting features that do separate it from the previous Torah portion as well. And we're going to unpack that. To kick off, if it's okay with you, I want to revisit some verses in our previous Torah portion, and that is in Deuteronomy chapter 20, because it does relate specifically to what we're about to read. So
what verse? What verse?
Verse 10.
Verse 1. Okay, verse
20, verse 10. It says, when you approach a town to attack it, you shall offer it terms of peace. Now, we talked about Sion and all of that sort of stuff last.
Right.
People can go back to the previous Torah portion. If it responds peaceably and lets you in, all the people present there shall serve you at forced labor. Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay. If it does not surrender to you, but you join in battle, then you shall lay siege to it. And when the Lord delivers it into your hand, you shall put all of its males to the sword. You may, however, Ross, you may take your booty, the women, the children, livestock, everything in the town, all its spoil, enjoy the use of the spoil of your enemy, which the Lord your God thus gives you. Thus you shall deal, and this is key, thus you shall deal with all the towns that lie very far from you. Okay?
Yeah.
These are the towns very far. Towns that do not belong to nations hereabout. All right? In the towns of the latter peoples, those that are hereabout, however, which the Lord your God is giving to you as a heritage, you shall not let any soul remain alive. Everyone gets to die if they're close to you. You must prescribe them, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, lest they lead you into doing abhorrent things, so on and so forth. Now,
Right.
Now, notice it doesn't mention the Egyptians, which I find very interesting, because at the time of Moses, and I know there is some discrepancy as to when exactly this whole Mosaic narrative happened, but regardless of that, for centuries surrounding that proposed time, or that window of opportunity, of Mosaic opportunity, if we can say it like that, the whole coastline of along the Mediterranean was Egypt, basically. And yet there is no mention of Egypt. I found that interesting. The other thing, of course, is that the Hittites, it mentions the Hittites, Ross, and the Hittites are far to the north.
Mm-hmm.
So it's curious. We know also that the primary target of the Moses Scroll, the only target of the Moses Scroll, is the Amorites. But here we have a number of, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as opposed to the 7 that we read in Deuteronomy chapter 7.
The list varies. The list of enemies varies depending on which text you read, though.
It does. That's exactly right. Now, if we move over to Ki Tetze, then when it begins, the question becomes, what is regarded, Ross, what is regarded as far away and what is regarded as near? That is the question. What is a town that is far? How far away is far is the question.
I don't know.
Well, we don't know. And if this is written during the Josianic Reform, then surely they are talking about the borders that are known to them in that day as towns that are here, as opposed to towns that are far away.
Well, let me just jump in real quick, because what's even more interesting in this idea that when you said Egypt, I'm thinking, how does Josiah die? He dies by the hand of an Egyptian.
That's right.
Necho, at the battle. He's en route to Carchemish, right? I mean, this battle takes place at Megiddo. And basically he's shot to death. So go ahead. I mean, when you said that, it just made me think, hey, wait a minute.
And that's right. And I'm thinking out loud too. I'm not too sure how to understand this. And it is. And another question that comes to mind reading this is, does Beit Peor, for example, fall into the category of a town far away, or does it fall into the category of a town near? I don't know, but it is interesting to consider the way that we have that narrative in different contexts, or presented to us in different ways. So we mentioned in a couple of previous, Torah portions a few weeks ago, Deuteronomy chapter 2, I think, presents it in a very minimal way, in which I don't think captives are taken. The Moses scroll presents it in a way by which captives are taken. And then I think it's the book of Numbers that says, what are you doing taking captives? You got to kill all of these ones. Is that in response to this passage that we just read there? Because they're very near, or are they very far? It's something to ponder. And I don't know what to do with that exactly. But the way that our Torah portion kicks off for us,
I was going to say that whatever the answer is to near and far, one of the things that we're going to find out about is, what do we do with the women captives? Because this is a big question. In fact, this Torah portion that we're going to get into today deals with quite a bit about women, not only women captives, but if you have a couple of wives and you love one, you don't love another, and on and on and on. So this is sort of a handbook, and I would say probably not one that you should follow very closely in today's world, right? All right.
Glad you said that, because this is the way it kicks off. When you take the field against your enemy, and the Lord your God delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive. Okay, so now we have to assume, and this is the reason why I read the passage before, we have to assume this is in reference to a town far away, because if you take a town far away, you're permitted to take captives, right? According to that. Okay, so we have to assume that this is one of those. When you take the field against your enemy, and Lord your God delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and would take her to be your woman, you shall bring her into your house, and she shall trim her hair and pare her nails, and discard her captive's garb. She shall spend a month's time in your house lamenting her father and her mother. The assumption there is, or mourning her father and her mother. The assumption is that they're now dead because you killed them.
Yeah, you just killed them.
There may be room for speculation that she is mourning the having left
missing
her
home. Yeah, missing home. Right.
That is a possibility.
But I think your first choice is right. They just killed the parents.
They just killed the parents, probably the brothers as well. So after that, you may come to her and possess her. Okay, so and she shall be your wife. She shall be your woman. Okay, so let's stop there. And let me just say, in the most controversial way, just to get this over and done with, this seems to me, Ross, that the Josianic reform permits rape in certain circumstances. What are your thoughts?
Well, I tell you, I would say this about this text. It is certainly not something that's very comfortable. I mean, if we read this, and I think there have been a lot of studies that say, well, if you compare it to other ancient Near Eastern, records and so forth, there is quite a bit of goodness in this, because you allow the captive woman a period of time to mourn. You give somebody 30 days, but I don't feel that way. I don't feel that this is, I don't know, it doesn't feel that like you're really doing anyone a special treat here, except, I mean, like, when I read this, and the translation you're reading, the JPS is a little bit different, but you're going to, it says, verse 12, you shall bring her home, this captive woman that just had her parents and family killed, to thy house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails. Now, in the Hebrew, but I just found it interesting, in our culture, even in modern times, we say you can do your nails. That's what the Hebrew literally says. You're going to let her. Get her to shave her head and do her nails. And then 30 days later, you can go into her. It just, whether one calls it rape, it's certainly, there is a 30-day window, but still, I mean, is that enough time for someone to fall in love and say, yeah, I'm happy I'm here? I don't think so. I don't like this.
I don't like this at all. However, if there is a way to redeem it slightly, then, and I think this is what you were alluding to, it needs to be placed in its time and culture. And so let me try and do that a little bit. But first, I just want to make the point that you and I don't like it. It reflects a cultural view of Josiah's day. So in a climate of war, women have no power. Their protection is secured by men. Sons are considered their most loyal future security. So the more you can produce, the more secure a woman's future will be. Sons are going to be loyal to their mother. Women were well aware of the vulnerable world in which they lived. This sort of situation is no surprise to them, although horrible as it may be, to find yourself in circumstances where an opposing force has just become victorious.
It's not surprising because we can see it on the news today. The Taliban does this. They may not give them 30 days, but
in any war climate, these are harsh realities where that you have to take into consideration in the decision-making process. Women are well aware, and in a war vulnerable era, this is what you have to deal with.
Yeah.
So there is the possibility that she considers her circumstance and makes the best of it.
It's a coping. It sounds like at best case, it's a coping with the harsh reality.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what some of these sources I read said the same thing. Here's a note I put to your point. The emotional and moral dissonance, the killer becomes husband.
Yeah.
In ancient Near East parallels, often presume male control. Deuteronomy adds a mourning period and manumission if released. This is a humanitarian curb by ancient standards, but it's still hard to square ethically. That's what I wrote. And I think that's the problem. I mean, it's very difficult. Now, look, I know some of our viewers might say, well, I don't care if you find it difficult to accept. This is the Bible. But what we have to realize, and we're going to get into this as we work through, is that some of these laws clearly reflect something that doesn't mesh well with other parts of the biblical narrative, and at times is even conflicting what we read. So this is one of those that I don't feel so bad about calling it difficult to accept, because if we ever get to the place where we don't find it difficult to accept this as being something from God as it's typically presented, then I think our heart has become hardened, honestly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It is a very difficult position to take from a fundamentalist perspective. It is most relieving in times like this, when you're reading passages like this, to go, oh, well, documentary hypothesis, Josianic reform, culture of the day, this is the way they viewed it. We don't agree, but this is what we're dealing with here. So
that's right.
It separates it from divinely imparted law, okay?
Right.
Which is just grand. All right, now verse 14, then, should you no longer want her, you must release her outright. You must not sell her for money. Since you had your will with her, you must not enslave her. Now, I think some, if I remember correctly, and you might have this in the Torah tablet, I think it says according to her will. If you must release her, if what do you have?
Mine says, and it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go without, or whither she will, but thou shalt not sell her at all for money.
Yeah.
You shall not deal with her as a slave because you've humbled her.
So the insinuation is that he has taken her sexually, but she has not. She's not in it, right? She's not happy about it.
She doesn't. She's not happy about the relationship.
And he finds no delight in her because there's no delight in her. She's not delighted.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now, fortunately, she doesn't become chattel. She's not sold as a slave. But here's the question, Ross: Where does
she go? That's what I was just thinking. Where does she go?
She can't go back to her mother and father's house. There is none now. They're gone. Yeah. Can she go back to her people? If her people were Israelites, they would then stone her to death, probably, because, and we'll get to that, and that actually appears in this Torah portion. I mean, she is now in a bad predicament, and she may also have conceived by this stage, right? Yeah. So it's just bad all around. Yeah.
Well, now, the good thing about this Torah portion is we have a bunch of these, just one right after the other, and that's number one, the captive woman.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, not the only thing to. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say it's not the only thing. I mean, before we jump off that, she shall be your woman. So the question is, let's say that she does make best of the situation and think, okay, this is my predicament. I'm going to make it work, whatever. Here's a question, Ross. Will the children be Israelites?
What do you think?
Well,
does he have to leave? Does he have to leave? Does she have to leave the children when she goes? What's the rule on that?
I think that the children will be regarded as, if he takes her to be his wife and they have children, they are regarded as Israelite. Whatever tribe he is from is the tribe they inherit. Now, there's a theological friction here because in Judaism will say, well, no, if the mother is not Jewish, the children are not Jewish. It's a mamzer or whatever. But we do have examples in the Tanakh where this is not the case. So Oved, for example, the son of Ruth and Boaz, she is a Moabitess.
We're going to talk about that later too.
Always and only a Moabitess. He is regarded as an Israelite. Absalom, if I remember correctly, his mother was not an Israelite. Rehoboam, king over Israel, his mother was not an Israelite. And there might be a couple of other examples as well. I wonder if, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Yotam, I can't remember if his mother was Israelite or not. In any case, there's that. So that sort of flies in the face of the rule of Judaism and matrilineal inheritance and that sort of thing. Now, what else do I have here? Let's go to 15. All right. Let's move on.
Okay, section 2. 2 wives.
Goodness.
You have one that's hated, and the question concerns the rights of the children of these two women. So this opens up all sorts of things. Number one, what's the deal? Can you have more than one woman? I mean, can you have more than one wife? What is the rule there? And we do have quite a few examples in the Hebrew Bible where we have people that have more than one wife. Just a couple of examples. You have Abraham, Jacob. I mean, these are big ones. Elkanah, David, Solomon. Obviously, we talked a little bit about that in the law of the king that the kings didn't know about. But it's interesting that you can, according to the Hebrew Bible, have more than one woman. The prohibition is that you can't take someone else's woman. But if a woman is not involved with another man, doesn't belong to another man, then according to some of these rules and this ancient custom, a man can have more than one woman. So that's the first thing. You've got to have more than one woman to love one and hate the other. Go ahead, Jonah.
Right. So my question is, so two things come to mind when it comes to this topic. One is that, and maybe you can elaborate on this because my Hebrew is not great. So in the 10 words, both in the canonical text, I think, and certainly in the Moses Scroll, when it refers to somebody's wife or your woman, it is singular, always singular. Does that ring true to you?
I haven't done a search to see if that's singular. I don't know. So that would be an interesting study.
Something to look at for a little bit of homework for the viewers. I do believe that's the case. The other thing, because this question comes up, it comes up all the time. People say, "Oh, are you allowed to? In fact, is this even something that we're supposed to do?" And so on and so forth. And I usually say to people, "Look, yeah, like you just said, it happens in the Bible. You can do that. Obviously, there are laws in Western culture that says you can only have one wife. So if you want to do that, there are countries where you can do that, and all of those
there
countries
are religions
countries you don't want to be.
Yeah, there are religions that allow it. The old story I've told plenty of people. One time I asked Bridget, just jokingly, "Hey, what do you think about this? It looks like these people were allowed in the Bible to have more than one woman." And she said, "Look, if you can get somebody else to come in as long as they help around the house, I don't care." And so I think she was joking, but it was said in such a tone I never ask it again. And I didn't want to push that issue. But that's the idea, is that it is in the biblical narratives. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up is we see sometimes in the text some of this legal material, especially that comes in, particularly in Deuteronomy, that no one in the patriarchal narratives knew anything about. For instance, Jacob, not only does he have more than one woman, he certainly favors Rachel, and he favors her children. Remember, we even get into the story where when they face Esau, and Esau is thought to be a threat, he orders his women and their children to approach the danger, possibly. He expects it to be dangerous. And he sends, he keeps Rachel and her children at the very back.
Last.
Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So the narrative would have us believe. So primogeniture is the what is it? Prioritizing the firstborn. And the example that we have here is that if you've got $60 to leave to your two sons, right? $40 will go to the firstborn, $20 to the secondborn, if we can put it that way, 2/3. Now, we might get into more detail in our next Torah portion when we talk about Ibal and Gerizim, but there is seems like a ranking system or a system of seniority within the division of the tribes based on their the mother to whom they were born and the order in which they are born.
Right.
And it does ring true to the math that is supplied here. But there's another way to interpret the math that is supplied here, and that is that regardless of how many children you have, the firstborn just gets twice as much as everybody else. A little bit different in the way that it seems to pan out in the Moses Scroll. But there is still primogeniture. There's still the prioritizing of the firstborn. So, okay.
Hey, one more point on this. When we talk about the idea of a hated wife, in this situation where you have a wife that you love and a wife that you hate, it also appears, we'll get to it a little bit later in the Torah portion, chapter 22, verses 13 through 21. And this is in the case, it's the same phrase, it's in the case where one brings charges against a bride, saying that she did not have the tokens of virginity, but that's the same idea. But now, Jono, we get into one of my favorite parts, and I'd like to say a few words about the rebellious son.
The rebellious son. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I have to tell you a little quick story. This goes back many, many years ago. I was reading for the first time in Hebrew, and I was working in a gospel narrative. I was reading in the Gospel of Matthew in Hebrew, the Hebrew Matthew known as Shem Tov. And I came across a passage that used a phrase. This is in Matthew 11:19. It's also in Luke chapter 7, verse 34. And it uses a phrase in Hebrew, zolel v'soveh. Zolel v'soveh is typically translated a glutton and a drunkard. Glutton and a drunkard. So what Jesus says, and I'll just hit the high points, he says that he is being called by the religious establishment, the religious leaders of his day, a glutton and a drunkard. You know, and he says, the Son of Man came eating and drinking. You said, behold, a zolel v'soveh. John came neither eating or drinking. You said, behold, he's got a demon. That's basically the phrase. First point, Matthew and Luke both have this story, slightly differently phrased, but what this tells us, most scholars believe, this is the prevalent view, is that Matthew and Luke, it's not in Mark, so they're not using Mark as the source, which they often are. Mark is considered to be the first. Matthew and Luke use that gospel to tell their story. But whenever Matthew and Luke have a piece that Mark doesn't have, scholars refer to this as Q. Not all scholars. Some famous scholars have argued against Q. But the point is that these two authors are both looking at a source. And the reason I'm bringing up a gospel point in a Torah portion is because the phrase that Jesus says they're saying about him, people automatically look at it and they go, oh, well, you know, it's talking about Jesus drinking wine. And then people break into the fundamentalist, my Jesus never drank anything fermented. And one says, no, Jesus drank wine, I can drink wine, hallelujah. So they're debating food and drink. I say, Jesus didn't mention it. He's not even talking about this. He's telling us, now later writers may have missed this point, but what he's saying that the religious leaders are saying about him goes to this passage in Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy 21, verse 18 through 21, it says, and I'm paraphrasing, if a man and a woman have a rebellious son, one who will not heed the voice of his mother and his father, they're going to take him to the elders of the city, and they're going to say, this son of ours is a zolel v'soveh, a glutton and a drunkard. And then everyone's going to pick up stones and stone him until he's dead. right? That's what you do with your kids who are rebels. It doesn't have to do with their eating habits and their drinking habits. But here's what happens. And I want to bring Ezra in just for a moment to tell us the Talmudic view of this particular passage and just see what he says.
The concept of the glutton and drunkard in Sanhedrin 71a centers around the rebellious son mentioned in Ki Tetze. The one who doesn't listen to his parents is a glutton, a drunkard, and supposedly warrants stoning. Now, the Talmudic rabbis take this law and essentially dismantle it through legal scrutiny. They impose a mountain of conditions. He must steal from his parents, not others, buy meat and wine with that stolen money, consume it in a particular way, and at a specific age range. The conditions are so narrow that it becomes functionally impossible. This leads to the famous rabbinic conclusion: it never happened and it never will happen. Instead, they say it's written so we might study it and receive reward, not apply it. What's happening here academically is fascinating. The rabbis preserve the text but neutralize its execution. It's an act of legal preservation without social implementation. They reframe the Torah's severity with moral discomfort and halakhic precision, subtly shifting divine command into theoretical discourse.
And you can understand why they would do that, because it is another one of those passages that you read and just go, really? Really? But to defend their point just a little bit, if I may, that the parents have to incriminate their own son, Ross. They have to incriminate him knowing full well the repercussions. And that seems to make this law likely hyperbolic. You know, it's like, who is going? I mean, how bad does the son have to be? Where the parents just go, you know what, Jimmy's way out of control. I'm done with him. I'm done. I don't want it anymore. He's a burden on us, on society, on this and that. Let's just take him to the elders and they'll stone him. Awesome. You know, so
that's right. Now,
it's
look, let me
go ahead.
And one of the things that just one more point on this, as you work through and you look at how they describe how impossible it is and what leads them to say it never happened and it never will happen. They start off, one of the arguments is, notice that the text says, Jono, that the son will not listen to the voice of his mother and his father. And then they get into this idea that in order for someone to violate this, the voice of the father and the voice of the mother have to be so in perfect harmony. In other words, they're saying, when do parents ever really fully agree? And they have to mean it, and then it just builds from there. Now, there are a couple of other passages, and we don't have to go into a lot of detail, but it's an interesting study to look at what do these really mean, because Zolel v'soveh, glutton and drunkard, is really not the way it's always translated. Proverbs 23:20 is pretty close. In other words, if you look at this text, Proverbs 23:20 is probably the one that goes closest in line with this. But there are others in the Hebrew Bible, and I would encourage people to do a study on both of those words to see, because I don't think it means here or in the Gospels in particular, the two passages I mentioned, I don't believe it has anything to do with the eating of food or drinking of wine. What this is saying, and what the enemies, the religious opponents of Jesus were saying about him, not that he's a drunk, not that he eats too much at the local buffet, but that he, Jesus, is a rebel. He's rebelling against the customs. And that is what Jesus is accused of by his enemies.
Yeah, quite right. If a man is guilty, verse 22, if a man is guilty of a capital offense and is put to death, and you impale him on a stake, party on,
man,
you must not let his corpse remain on the stake overnight. You must bury him that same day, for an impaled body is an affront to God. You shall not defile the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. A land full of rotting, impaled bodies, Ross, it's not good for tourism.
No, it's not. It's not. By the way, this same idea of impaling a body, this cruel manner of death, interestingly enough, and I might put the link. Yeah, that's right, Esther, but I wasn't going to go into all the detail of the different cases, but I will say when reading this Torah portion in 2016, Simcha Yakubovich was looking at this particular idea, the one in about the rebellious son followed by the body which is impaled upon a stake or a tree, and he says this, and in the Dead Sea Scrolls where it talks about this, he had this idea that it was associated, maybe referring to Jesus. Now, people could dismiss that or whatever, but when he was working on this article, it just so happened that he was talking to me about this idea, and I brought up that this passage in the gospel referred to Jesus, and then he wrote this article and made the connection and told him that I had told him this. Interesting idea. But he did one article about the Dead Sea Scrolls and Jesus, and then Jesus and Paul in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Notice, because in Galatians, this next passage is really picked up. It's just interesting that back to back, remember in Galatians 3, do you remember, Jono? Think back.
No, you get
Paul cites in Galatians 3:13 that Christ has become a curse. Because he's quoting this particular passage.
Yeah, but it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because there was in the Gospels, it says we've got to take him down before Pesach. We have to take him down. We have to entomb him, and he ends up in the tomb of Joseph Arimathea. And then there's that whole thing, isn't there? We won't get into it now. Isaiah 53 verse 9, I think it is, that everyone goes, "Oh, you see," but actually it's around the other way, that he died with the wicked and was buried in the tomb of the rich. And Isaiah has this around the wrong way, and people like to just quickly brush over it and hope that you don't notice. But there was a very earnest attempt to have him taken down before Pesach, and maybe that's off the back of this. I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah. Chapter 22, Ross.
All right, rolling right along.
Stock. Yeah, if you see his cow or his donkey or whatever, and it's gone wandering, then take it back to him. And if you don't know who it belongs to, then put it in your paddock, and when you find out, you give it back to him. And if you see one that's under a burden and needs help, you go and look after it. I like this one. I think they're good.
I do too.
All right. Now,
by the way, before you leave that, there's something I noticed in my note taking, talking about lost items, then help animals in distress. There's a bird nest law, Jono, in chapter 22, verse 6 and 7. And there is a promise that if you do this thing right about the bird nest, that it may go well with you and prolong your days. Now, there are only a few things in the Hebrew Bible that are attributable to prolonging the days. And this is one of them. You remember, one has to do with the commandment to honor your father and your mother, at least according to the canonical text. Of course, we've got an interesting parallel with or a point to make according to the Moses scroll, in that we've told our viewers that we had two copies, and hopefully we'll find one or piece of one or whatever, so we can take this message further. But anyway, there are two copies, and both of those contain the 10 words, and one of the copies adds that you shall honor or give weight to your father and your mother, that your days may be lengthened, right? And the other manuscript, the other copy, doesn't have that.
Doesn't have that. And so the question becomes, which one is original? And my position, and I'm not 100% on this, but I like to think that one, it was just added by rote, because we have a couple of places in the Moses scroll, including the blessed man list that corresponds to the 10 commandments, that says that blessing applies to all of the commandments, not just the mother and father one. But that is interesting, and it takes me back, actually, the idea of, if you come across the bird and the nest, the eggs, you can take the eggs, but don't take the bird, and it's really the same thing as in chapter 20, verse 20, just before. Only trees, if you go out into battle and you're laying siege, don't cut down a tree that bears fruit, Ross. This is your food. Take the fruit, leave the tree. Next year, it's going to produce more fruit, and that's kind of the same principle, I think. And but here in verse 20, it doesn't say so that so that it may go well with you and live long upon the land. But similar principle. But you want to jump over a verse, Ross. We're not jumping over that verse. 22 verse 5 is where we are. We have to go back from the birds. We can't just jump over this one. And this one's going to make the Democrats very angry. A woman must not put on man's apparel, nor shall a man wear woman's clothing, for whoever does these things is abhorrent to the Lord your God. It's also abhorrent to all of the normies, of which I am one. But the world in which we live, Ross, my goodness.
Gender-specific garments, gender-specific. But here, that brings up a question.
Go ahead.
What is a gender-specific garment in biblical times? Because, at least in Sunday school books, it looks like they're both kind of wearing like a dress type,
I want those. They look super comfortable. I'd love to get around one of those. It is, to your point, it is a culturally sensitive command, right? If you're going to take this from the fundamentalist perspective, you still have to recognize this is a culturally sensitive. Wherever you go, there are different norms as to how men and women dress. But what we always see, is that men and women dress distinctly differently. And those two lines should not be blurred, or not even just blurred, but one shall not wear the other. Men and women are different. They're just different.
Mm-hmm. And so basically, that's one of the things that I found when I looked this up. It says that anytime a person, one gender, is using clothing that blurs, cross-representation that blurs a role or an identity, that's where it's the wrong thing. Yeah. So that's what this is talking about.
It is.
And by the way, in some of the church groups, remember, some of the church groups will say women have to wear dresses and can't wear slacks and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is talking. Well, in a way, I guess it could be what it's talking
about.
In
a way. Yeah. And I guess, smaller cliques and groups may have, stricter guidelines on that. And if you choose to be part of that community, then that's what you're signing up to. That's fine. But generally speaking, women and men are different. We dress differently. There are societal norms in whatever culture that you go to. And it should be abided. And when someone pretends to be that which they are not, it's ridiculous, and we all see it as ridiculous and distasteful, and it shouldn't be done. So here's a law that I'm standing by for sure.
But just to clarify my point real quickly, I don't have religious rules here at the building where a woman has to wear a dress and not wear pants or anything like that. But it's really about the blurring of the lines. If a man is dressing like a woman and women are dressing like men, you know it in your culture. That's your
right.
Point,
exactly.
right?
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
All right. So jumping ahead now to verse 8, Ross, not everyone is so bright, and they may just, walk up the stairs to the rooftop and walk off. So to combat this, we need to put a fence around it. We have to command that, because apparently back in Josiah's day, people were just walking off roofs. So we need a fence around. Not a bad law, I suppose. Verse 9, you shall not sow your vineyard with a second kind of seed. We're talking about cross-pollination perhaps here. But then it goes on and says, and also don't plow with an ox and a donkey together, and you shall not wear cloth combined of wool and linen. So is this a principle of not mixing, or is there some sort of superstition around this, I wonder? Because
I don't know.
The ox and the donkey together, why not? I mean, if you can plow a field that way, what is the problem?
I wonder, I don't know. I've always wondered if it's that, let's say, I would imagine, and I might be wrong. I have neither an ox nor a donkey, but I'm wondering if the ox might pull harder than the donkey or vice versa, and maybe it would create some kind of problem. I don't know. And maybe then your field wouldn't be straight. Who knows? I don't know.
I consider that, and that's quite often the answer. But actually, when you're plowing, you are directing your animals. And I thought, hang on a minute, this need not be. So maybe there is a superstition behind this. But when it comes to wool and linen, obviously these two materials function very differently. They have very different properties. If it's raining outside, you're not going to put on a cotton T-shirt and go out, but you might put on a woolen jumper, right? So because it repels the moisture. So there are different functions for these things, but I don't know about the whole mixing. It just seems with the middle example, it may be a superstition.
Well, mixing though is really big in the world of videos online right now. There are a lot of people who are suggesting, whether you believe it or not, that there is, if you mix these types of fabrics, that there is it create. In other words, your aura. Have you ever read any of this?
Like your auras, that as well.
Anyway, but some people have they really stand by this. Now, I don't know if people here know anything about that, but that's one of the views. And then other people are so strict on this idea that God doesn't want mixing. I've even met people, more than one, let me just say, who will only eat one item like at a mealtime. So if you, like, instead of piling a plate like we do on these tours and we go to these large buffets, if you're going to eat corn, eat corn. If you're going to eat peas, but don't mix all that together. Really? You got to do it differently.
Wow. And this is, and look, I mean, I used to do similar things from a fundamentalist perspective, looking at this and going, oh, well, I've got to fall into line of no mixing, and made some really not crazy decisions, but made some principles to stick by in regards to that. Now I look at this and I'm like, I wonder.
Well, garments. If this is superstition, I'll just tell you about the garments. I'm starting to look for very consistent with clothing. I try to wear, if I'm going to wear cotton, and that's usually what I wear, or linen, that's what I wear. I don't mix those things. And I no longer buy clothes or even wear clothes that are of mixed fabrics like that, especially man-made fabrics.
And I've mentioned this before, but man-made fabrics, when you do, and as a result of verses like this, I too started wearing 100% materials. So I now love wearing 100% cotton. This is 100% cotton. This is 100% wool.
Yep.
I love these 100% natural fibers. I've just now once you wear them, you're like, oh yeah, man, these are great. And then if you put on a man-made fiber, it's kind of plasticky. It's kind of this sort of polyestery, nylon-y sort of. I don't like it. I can't get past that now. But I do like 100% materials. Now, tassels, tzitzit, four corners. We're not given a reason here. It goes into detail, obviously, in the priestly text of Numbers chapter 15, verses 37 and following. Which makes me wonder which came first. Ordinarily, we would say the priestly material came after this, the Josianic reform, which makes me wonder, Ross, that initially this might have been a fashion statement. That is to say that perhaps there was something about presenting clothing in this way that was desired. We do it today. There's all sorts of fashion fads and fashion statements and all that sort of stuff. And perhaps later, the priestly source gave it a more, if you like, religious significance. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I was going to ask Ezra to weigh in on the difference because I thought the first thing I did was I weighed. I remembered, of course, in Numbers 15, 37 through 41, it uses a different word. Here in Deuteronomy, it uses a different word. I wondered, is there an opinion that's prevalent in scholarship as to which of these came first? Let's ask Ezra.
Excellent spot by Jono. And yes, both passages refer to tassels, but with differences in language and context that have caught the attention of scholars for centuries. In Numbers, the command is to make tzitzit on the corners of garments with a thread of blue, techelet. It emphasizes remembrance of the commandments and devotion to Jehovah. In Deuteronomy, the command is to make gedolim on the four corners of one's garment, but it notably omits the blue thread and any explanatory theology. Scholars generally see Numbers 15 as belonging to the priestly source, with its characteristic ritual emphasis and theological framing. Deuteronomy 22 is part of the Deuteronomic Code, which tends to be more legalistic and nationalistic, less focused on priestly ritual. So, from a documentary hypothesis view, Deuteronomy's version is likely later, either revising or simplifying the priestly regulation. As for Jono's fashion theory, he's not totally off. Tassels were definitely part of ancient Levantine attire, including among non-Israelite cultures. They signified status, tribal identity, or religious association. Archaeologically, tassels themselves don't preserve well, but iconography from places like Lachish and Egyptian tombs shows figures with fringed garments. Plus, there's that famous techelet dye, once thought lost, but now linked to Murex sea snails, traced through ancient dye vats found in coastal Israel. So were they spiritual, political, or fashionable? Probably all three. Ancient Israelite law was never just about theology. It touched the body, the home, and even the hem of your robe.
So I think Ezra has just done what I caught him on last week, and that is that he's placed the priestly material prior to the Josianic reform, which I think is questionable. But we'll let the viewers do the do the homework there. Interesting, though. Yeah, it seems like it may well have been a fashion statement, as mentioned here. I'm still leaning towards the possibility that the priestly source elaborated upon this and gave it a religious significance. Anyway, if you have a comment on that, put it down in the comments. We'd love to read it. Ross.
Yes.
Oh, you're still there. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were still there.
Yeah, no, I'm waiting. I'm ready. I'm just I'm thinking about the slandered bride. Are you ready to jump into that?
13 to 19, a man marries a woman and cohabits with her. Then he takes an aversion to her and makes up charges against her and defames her, saying, "I married this woman, but when I approached her, I found that she was not a virgin. In such a case, the girl's father and the mother shall produce the evidence of the girl's virginity." And everyone just goes, "Well, how do you do that now?" Before the elders of the town, or the elders, this whole thing. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, "I gave this man my daughter to wife, but he was taken an aversion to her. So he has made up charges saying, I did not find your daughter a virgin. But here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity, and he shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town." Now, that suggests to me, Ross, that after the wedding night, she collects
That's what I've always heard.
The bedclothes, and she goes to mum and dad and goes, "Wow, wild night. Anyway, here you go. Just keep this in safekeeping."
I don't know how that was done. I do think that is what I've heard, though. It is some kind of proof from the initial night, but I don't know that anyone really knows that. I think we assume that going into the text. I don't see what else it could be.
I can't see what it could be. But the thing is, Ross, is that such an evidence would be easy to fabricate, would it not, if you needed to? So I think with that in mind, I wonder if this is more a warning against the husband from taking such defamatory action against her if he doesn't like her. And it says that if it goes on to say the elders of the town shall then take the man and flog him, and then they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give it to the girl's father, for the man has defamed a virgin in Israel. Moreover, party on for her, she shall remain his wife. He shall never have the right to divorce her. And she's like, "Oh, well, great, thanks," because if she was found guilty, Ross, she would be the one to be stoned to death.
Right.
I think. And so he has found something about her that he doesn't like. He has defamed her by saying, "Oh, she's not a virgin," and threatening her life. And now the rule is that she is stuck with him forever.
There's another text that's kind of the same. Anyway, Exodus 22, verse 16 and 17. And it's related in this sense. This is at least in my notes. When a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. And you think, well, that sounds pretty bad too.
And not only
if
that,
it's forced.
And not only that, Ross, but the difference between the two is that this man who has I guess, raped her, is now has to give the father 50 shekels. There's a difference between these two. It's coming up in our Torah portion.
But let me
go ahead.
But verse 17 of Exodus 22 says, "But if her father refuses to give her to him, he shall pay an amount equal to the bride price for virgins." So this one seems to have a caveat on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here, so this is interesting. Now, whereabouts in Exodus is that, by the way?
Exodus 22, verse 16 and 17.
Do you know what? There is an enormous amount of overlap of Exodus 22 in this Torah portion. All of those portions are from the Elohist source, which is interesting. And a number of these allusions back to Exodus chapter 22 begin with "remember," making no secret about the fact that this is something that you're aware of. This is something that's written before. Refer back to this. So it seems like the Elohist source is most certainly an older source than the Josianic reform. We'll highlight those as we go through. But here in our Torah portion, that does come up, and the bride price is 50 shekels as opposed to 100 shekels in the example we just gave, suggesting that defamation is worth 50 shekels. I guess is the reason why they pay the extra.
Mm-hmm.
All right, where to now, Ross? Oh, well, following that, let me just say, if the charge proves true and the girl is found not to be a virgin, then the girl shall be brought to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of the town will stone her to death, for she did a shameful thing, committing fornication under her father's authority. Thus you'll sweep away the evil from the midst. And again, this is just another honor killing, is it not? And then 22, if a man is found lying with another man's wife, both of them, the man and the woman with whom he lay, shall die. Thus you shall sweep away evil from Israel. This one, I don't know about stoning, but this one I'm not as opposed to as the previous. Yeah.
The adultery, the breaking the adultery, you mean?
Yeah, adultery.
Now, then it gets into all sorts of various other, I guess, you have the betrothed virgin in the city. If because she didn't cry out, both die. But if it's in the field and no one could hear, then the man dies and not the woman. And
again,
then the unbetrothed virgin sees 50 shekel fine to father. This is actually a more accurate place to plug in the Exodus 22, 16, and 17, because Deuteronomy doesn't mention the father's veto, whereas Exodus 22, 16, and 17 does. So he can veto the whole deal. You know, if a woman is seized, that's what that's the point there.
And this is another passage that really makes you sort of shake your head. But 22 verse 23. Here's a scenario, Ross. What if he rapes her out just somewhere in the town and puts his hand over her mouth so that she cannot scream out? So she has no ability to, as is, not an uncommon case. And then she must be stoned to death because no one heard her screaming out. I mean, this is an impractical law. And it really just, if a girl really wants to tango, I guess the rule is go for a picnic out in the country. And that way you're risk-free, there are no repercussions. But, it's
certainly hard to understand what's being said in these particular texts and how it could reasonably be applied. I mean, that to me, as I read through these, I thought the same thing. Right. Yeah, how would it puts the onus on the girl to get help when certainly in these cases it sounds like she would need help. But then one other point, you mentioned this phrase, purge evil from Israel. This refrain occurs over and over in Deuteronomy, and I just have a few of them marked. Chapter 13, verse 5, 17, chapter 17 has a few of them, 19, 21, 22. We have 3 cases just in this chapter alone where it talks about purging the evil or the bad from Israel. The other thing is that one of the things, and I think we'll see it more even as we go into this, but you see the importance of the elders in the gate, which that idea seems to point forward in time beyond a wilderness experience, more towards a settled town, wouldn't you think?
Quite right. Yeah, quite right. And I agree with that. Chapter 23, Ross. We get some more crushed testicles. Are you ready? No man shall marry his father's former wife. Thank goodness for that. As to remove his father's garment. No one whose testicles are crushed or whose member is cut off shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. Okay. No one begotten, misbegotten shall be, okay, so all of these people are crossed off the list. No Ammonites or Moabites shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation. Okay. Because, Ross, now I have a question for you. Because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey after you left Egypt, and because they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Petor, to curse you. Petor. You did a whole program on this recently.
I don't remember exactly what I came away with as relative to this.
Well, you remember when we were talking,
do you remember
when we were talking about this whole thing, and I said to you, well, this is like a month's journey away, maybe even 6 weeks journey to go and find this guy on the banks of the Euphrates, and by the time they return with him, 3 months has passed. It seems kind of again impractical, but you had a different spin on this.
Yeah, I did. And let me tell you something that came out of that. We have a lot of really sharp viewers. And so we were talking about the museum in Jordan where you can actually go. And there's, this red-lettered edition of Balaam's prophecies. And so we talked a lot about that. Well, anyway, I posted that class, and some of our sharp-eyed viewers said, I wonder if the name Petra is tied to this Petor. And I thought about it, and I don't know that it is, but I wonder if somehow there is an association. Now, obviously, the Greek ties to the word for rock, like a fortress, but I wonder if there is an underlying Semitic connection there between ancient Petor and Petra. That region, and you ever thought about that?
Well,
I never thought about
the point that you that everyone came away with after that class was that actually this is a lot closer. It's a lot closer.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
And fair enough. Notice there's no mention of the Midianites in that little passage there, which is also interesting.
Yep.
Verse 8: You shall not abhor an Edomite, for he is your kinsman. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, for you were a stranger in his land. Children born to them may be admitted to the congregation of the Lord, to the third generation. To the third generation, Ross, it kind of suggests sort of an ethnic assimilation, don't you think? Which is interesting.
Yeah. Hey, what is your take, just quickly, on, I know typically, like for instance, in the Talmud, they go to try to explain the fact that Ruth is a Moabitess. And in fact, that is the angle they take, because someone might read this exclusion of any of the Moabites up to the 10th generation and go, hey, wait a minute. The monarchy comes through a Moabitess. And so therefore, but what they say is, well, it says a Moabite and not a Moabitess. So if a Moabitess marries a good Jewish boy, it's all taken care of. Is that what you believe? Is that where you're at on that?
I remember talking to Tovia about this, and I think he said to me, yeah, it does say that, but you also have to acknowledge that they're always referred to in the masculine. So, it's not really a point.
Maybe, yeah.
But then the response to that is, oh, but of course, who would ever think that Ruth didn't convert, as if there was such a thing back then, to the institution of Judaism.
Right.
But yeah, to your point, Oved, Yishai, Jesse, and then David. So there you go. Yeah. Now, here's a good rule. I like this. If you're going to if you're going to relieve yourself out in the field, just bury it. Like that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting thing in verse 15 here, Ross. since the Lord your God moves about, or actually, I think, what does it say in your Torah tablet? Walks about in your camp to protect you and to deliver you. Let your camp be holy. Don't want to find anything unseemly among you and turn from you. Like, so God is walking around in the camp and going, what is all this? That's it. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Well, let me ask you a question very practically. When we think about this idea of going outside the camp, you know, I don't think we typically, if you're used to looking, say, in a Sunday school book or whatever, and you see the group of people camped, it's not a big, massive place. But if you really have to go outside the camp, you know, what does that really mean? And if you have 3 million people, you know, how far would you have to go? And not even to make a joke about it, but I mean, seriously, practically, what is that distance, you know, that you have to go to get outside the camp far enough to relieve oneself?
Quite right.
It's just something to think about.
Something else to think about is chapter 20, verse 4, and chapter 31, verse 6, where it also says that God marches with them. This is the only place where God is walking around the camp, and he doesn't want to step in anything. But it does sort of lend an idea of how the Josianic reformers viewed God, you know, anthropomorphically, someone who walks around, you know, in the camp. All right, 16 and 17. Where are we now? You shall not turn over. I like this rule, actually. You shall not turn over to his master a slave who seeks refuge with you from his master. He shall live with you in any place that he may choose among the settlements, wherever he pleases. You must not ill-treat him. The idea behind this is that if you have someone who sold himself into slavery for a time, or you have a slave, it is on you to keep them in a condition by which they do not want to leave. If they are being ill-treated, they have the right to leave and seek refuge, and the person with whom they seek refuge with is obligated to grant them that. I think it's a good rule. Yeah. You know, it should be like that, but it does contradict only like in the previous Torah portion where it says, you know, if you offer peace to a town and they accept that, well, now you can go in and you can take them as slaves and forced labor and so on and so forth. Forced labor is something I would certainly want to flee from. Other Torah portions, I think in Numbers, where it says, be nice to your Hebrew slave, but foreign slaves, you can treat them harshly, whatever, don't worry about it. They may seek refuge, and according to this passage, it should be granted them. I think this is a good rule.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up both cases and different approaches to the concept of slavery and so forth in the Hebrew Bible, and it goes to show how those that were for slavery and those that were against slavery, not only in the U.S., but other countries, have used biblical texts to push their particular side of the argument, because some texts seem to have one, some say the other, you know?
Brings us to something called drapetomania. Have you ever heard of that?
No, never heard of
it. So in 1851, a chap by the name of Samuel A. Cartwright hypothesized that the cause of enslaved Americans fleeing captivity was because they had a mental illness, and he termed it as that. He was thoroughly laughed at, as he should be, but he came up with this whole theory.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
People can look that up. We won't go into the detail of that now. All right. Apparently prostitution is bad. Check that box. No one should be a prostitute. So that also is abhorrent to the Lord. Verse 20, you shall not. Oh, interest. Okay. Speaking of, there's a lot of impractical laws in this section. But again, this is another one that overlaps with Exodus chapter 22. Again, the e-source that the Josianic reformers are drawing from. But not charging interest is not economically practical. And it put the Jews in a difficult situation, particularly when, Ross, Christians decided that they were now the chosen people, replacement theology, supersessionism, so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
And they were the ones that could not charge their brothers, their fellow Christians, interest. And so how do you get around that? Well, you get Jews to do it for them. Now, this is something the Jews would also do. They'd sort of try and get around these rules by saying, well, what if I lend to Gentile Jimmy over here, and then Gentile Jimmy can lend to Chaim over here, and can we get around it that way? But the rules are very, very strict for a time. And actually it is, if people want to read about that in history, the History of the Jews by Johnson, really, really good book.
Okay.
But page 172, 173 goes into some detail as how it was from, I think it was 1179 and onwards, that the Jews were almost forced to perform these functions by Christians so that Christians could get around this rule. And they became the moneylenders, and they became hated as a result of it.
All right.
There we go.
Vows?
Vows. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, chapter 23, verse 21 through 23, don't delay fulfilling vows. Better not to vow than to vow and fail. Is that accurately describe maybe what you see? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think Jesus would concur with this in the Sermon of the Mount once again. He goes into some detail. All right. Let's see. Another impractical law, when you enter another man's vineyard, just eat his stuff. Don't fill a bag with it, Ross.
Yeah, you can. But you can eat it, but you can't bring like a bag. Now, do you guys have, in the States, in some places, you have to bring your own bags when you go in the store. Some places are a little bit more lax. Where I live, they give you plastic bags. Certain other places, no, we don't want to get the pollution up, so they have. But either way, you can't bring those bags into your neighbor's yard and just take enough and leave with bags full. No, but if you're walking through, you can eat the berries off the tree.
When you think about it, though,
what bushes.
Doesn't everybody then at dinner time just go wandering around in each other's gardens and fields? I mean,
maybe we should. That'd be a better way to do it. It
incentivizes that. Just go next door. You come to my place. I'll go to your place. Going to eat your stuff. It just seems to incentivize that. But okay, all right.
You think it would lead to problems, though?
I don't know. It seems impractical. I think in its outworking. Chapter 24, though, we got to steam ahead.
Divorce.
Man takes a wife. Yes, that's right. So, and then he divorces her, and then she takes another man, marries her, and then divorces her. This woman, obviously, no good. But the first husband, not necessarily.
Jono, hold on. She might be a bad picker. She might have, because I know several people who.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that's okay. We also have plenty of examples of just really bad guys in the world.
That is true.
Absolutely. I mean, I can see, and we have cases of this in every town in America.
Mm-hmm.
Bad people. Not a lot of good guys. Not everybody's a good guy like the two of us.
That's
true.
Just put it that way. The first husband who divorces her shall not take her back again. Well, that's probably good advice, though. I mean, really. All right, so that is that. When a man has taken a bride and he goes out to the army. Now, I like this rule as well. I think the next few are good. He's just taken a bride. Don't go and fight. He's got a year exemption from army service. I think
to gladden his wife.
Why not? I think it's good. Verse 6: a hand mill or an upper millstone shall not be taken in pawn. But that would be taking someone's, this is their livelihood. So this is not something, I think that's fair. And
a lot of these, like you said, are really good rules. I love this part of the Pentateuch because we really have some things that make you think. Social justice, how should you treat someone else? And some of these, like you pointed out, Exodus 22, Exodus 23, here in Deuteronomy, in this section, we see probably just a different version of some of the same laws. Maybe, as Ezra put it going in, that there may be a later editorial elaboration or maybe updating of these laws, but I like some of these. I mean,
quite right.
Justice for a sojourner, orphan, widow.
Don't be kidnapping people. That's fair enough.
Yep.
Verse 8, skin affections. Oh, party on with skin affections. All right. Be most careful. do exactly as the Levitical priest instructs you. Well, that takes us back to Leviticus chapter, our favorite chapters 13 and 14. We did that. It makes me wonder again: is the priestly source here elaborated from this verse? I don't know. But then it says an interesting thing, Ross. Verse 9: Remember what the Lord did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. Well, that takes us back to Numbers chapter 15 and Numbers chapter 12. I beg your pardon, and that is an e-source once again. So there seems to be an established e-source, and it's saying to the people, hey, remember this story.
Now, I'm not looking at the tablet, and I don't have all the sources memorized. Are you going by what Baden says, or are you
both.
going by...
I do think both, but
okay.
Going by Richard Elliott Freeman
later.
primarily is saying this is an e-source. Again, in chapter 24, verses 10 and to 15, you must not make a loan of any sort of your countrymen, so on and so forth. This whole section, again, is taken from Exodus chapter 22, once again, an e-source. It expands upon that. 24:16, Ross, is there anything else you want to highlight before I get there?
Well, no, that's fine. I like that. This rule is something we've talked about quite a bit, but it's the idea that basically one pays for his own sin.
That's right.
And now, it's that simple.
Well, it is that simple, and we've talked about this before in regards to Jeremiah chapter 31, Ezekiel chapter 38, and it is, speaking of Richard Elliott Freeman and Baden, it is Baden.
Ezekiel 33, I think.
And 18, sorry, Ezekiel 18 and 33.
Yeah, 18 and 33, yeah.
And it's Baden that proposes that this verse is a redactor off the back of those passages that I just mentioned. A redactor has slipped that in here. So I don't know that Richard Elliott Freeman holds that view, but that's Baden's view. So I find that interesting. Okay. All right, then.
Wait.
Yeah.
Let's see. Just making sure. In 24:18, it mentions, remember that you were slaves in Egypt.
Yep.
I think that's one of the things that anchors this. Yeah, when we find these passages, remember that you were a slave in Egypt. This is a big part of the revelation. Whether we're talking about priestly material or later, it seems to come throughout. But this idea is mentioned a couple of times just in this one Torah portion. So
it is.
I think in a way, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's verse 22 as well. Here in verse 18. Mentioned before in 16:12, 15:15, and then it takes us back to the 10 words as it appears in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15, which changes the reason for Shabbat from creation to having been slaves in Egypt. So you can see that clearly comes from the Josianic reform. He has done that. That's motivated by something, and I do find that most curious.
Yeah. Right. Are you at 25 yet?
I am.
You ready to jump into 25?
I absolutely am in 25.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say this: if there is a controversy between men and they come into judgment, and the judges judge them, then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. And it will be if the wicked man be worthy to be beaten, Jono, that the judge shall cause him to lie down. And to be beaten before his face according to his wickedness by number. Now, I believe this would straighten some people out.
Yeah.
Listen to this. 40 stripes he may give him, and he shall not exceed, lest if he should exceed and beat him above these with many stripes, then your brother should seem vile unto thee. So I guess if you stop at 39, like you go hard on for 39 times and then you stop, then that's okay.
That's fine.
Don't hit 40. That one more stroke is too much.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we had cat o' nine tails. Even in the 1800s was an Australian punishment. You probably had something similar there, but it was 9 ropes from a whip from a handle with perhaps knots and even bone. Sharp bones sort of into it, and it really you'd know about it for months afterwards because there'd be
I'm sure
there'd be a bit of skin missing It's a harsh and a pretty harsh punishment. Shall not muzzle an ox while it's threshing. Okay, fair enough. I like that one.
Wait. I just this is interesting. It's a passage in 2 Corinthians. Paul says he's listing about all the horrible things that's happened to him. And he says in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 24, 5 times I've received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1.
5 times.
5 times.
You'd have the scars.
I don't know, man. I mean, huh?
You'd have the scars to prove it. If it was anything like the cut of 9 tails that we have here, then you'd certainly have the scars to prove it. And like I said, you know about it for months afterwards.
Well, I just happened to. I remembered something about that from my past, and I looked it up today, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of times, man. Anyway, hard. Sorry, don't muzzle an ox, Jono.
Don't be doing that. And then levirate marriage. All right. So what's your feeling on this? What's your feeling on this one, Ross?
Man. This whole Torah portion is full of hard questions for Ross. I get the idea. I really get the idea.
I get the idea.
And I think it's a noble idea that you would take in this. I mean, because I'm thinking in the ancient culture. I don't want to do this. I'm just saying. But in the ancient culture, and you want to perpetuate a family line on behalf of this brother, let's say your family member who's taken this woman in, and in a way it's a protecting thing. And so in this section of the Pentateuch material, we're dealing with taking care of those less able to take care of themselves, widows and so forth. And in this case, I think that's part of it. What I find very interesting is the whole idea, and I was going to ask you, what about this weird ritual that's involved?
Yeah,
the spitting.
Well,
and,
it seems to be that the writer here is just taking for granted that the widow is putting shame on the brother who will not fulfill this duty. It's up to him, but if he doesn't do it, then he will become sandalless, and the family will become known as the family of the sandalless one, and so it's shame upon them, and she expects it from him. And you have to remember again that sons are her security, her future security. So I get it, but we certainly didn't do it today. Go ahead.
Well, maybe the two together, the idea that you just presented, that a person who's not willing to take in one who is in this condition in that society should be recognized as you're not willing to stand up and do the right thing. Therefore, you're going to be known. And again, we have going before the elders at the gate. This point is made.
Ruth,
Yeah, and we've got Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 21:19, 22:15, and 25:7, and it to me it feels like this is stating the way things were in a later period. Now, do you remember? I know you do, but when we go on a tour in Israel, when we go up to biblical Dan. One of the things that they have there is set up is the gate, the ancient gate where you would have walked through. And there's this plaque, and it talks, and it gives several verses, this being one of them, about the elders sitting at the gate. So I always think about that when I read it, is that place going through that ancient gate.
Yeah, quite right. You just mentioned, did you say Exodus chapter 22, verse 15?
No, I meant, I think it's Deuteronomy 22:15.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so verse 11, 2 men get into a fight, Ross, and the wife comes up
this is another weird one.
to save her husband from the antagonist and puts out her hand and seizes him by his...
You can't, Jono, that means something different in the state. That's a little bit rough.
Oh, is it? What does that mean? Oh, you don't want to go into detail.
No.
You shall cut off her hand.
But I mean it. Yeah.
Okay. My question about this passage, Ross, is why do we need that illustration? can't it just say, don't go grabbing a man by his
genitals is the proper word, I think.
By his,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Surely we're talking about the scrotum here. I mean, you know, and I wonder, like, if there's a fight and she kicks him between the legs, is it equally?
No, it says this, and one of the things when I looked it up, there's a thing about in the ancient Near East, a law that often guards male procreative capacity.
I get
you
that.
know,
get that. Cutting off a hand.
So now I still think it is a
pretty drastic
penalty.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
but this is the Torah portion that we're dealing with, Ross. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
It's very, very rough.
13 to 16. Well, equal weights. That goes without saying. It's a good rule. Most certainly have some equal weights. And then we have Amalek. And this is the way, Ross, that our Torah portion ends. This takes us back to Exodus chapter 17. And again, Exodus chapter 17 is attributed to the E source. Amalek, remember to blot out the memory, don't forget. It's, again, impractical. How do you remember to blot out the memory and not forget to do that? And yet, this is what we have. What are your thoughts here?
Well, it's, when I think about this particular pericope about remember Amalek, obviously, like you said, it goes back to Exodus 17. You get this example, when Saul fails in 1 Samuel 15, the idea of Israel and Amalek being in a battle. In fact, Amalek in this passage, it says that there is this eternal war in Exodus 17 between God and Amalek from generation to generation. This is interesting. When was Amalek truly an enemy? And you have to wonder, does this come in later? But one of the things that I think about is in Exodus 17, it says to Moses that he is to write this in a scroll. When I did the study several years ago that got us into this whole quest that ultimately led us to the Torah, the discovery of the Moses scroll and the whole story there, 7 things that Moses supposedly wrote, and this
is one of them.
Was one in Exodus 17.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting in that study is that I found all of those 7 in the book of Deuteronomy. So it's like Exodus 17 says to write this about Amalek, and then here it is in Deuteronomy chapter 25. So I don't know.
Not in the Moses scroll.
Interesting.
Yeah, not in the Moses scroll.
Nope, it is not in the Moses scroll.
Ki Tetze is where we are kicking off next week, and that does take us back. It's going to be a massive show because it takes us back, finally, joins chapter 11, back to the Ebal and Gerizim ritual in chapter 27 of Deuteronomy. There is a little bit of Josianic reform left, and we do come to the end of it in our next Torah portion. Is there any final thoughts, Ross, before we sign off?
Man, it's just a whole bunch of, it's really interesting because this Torah portion is a little bit tougher to deal with because you have so many laws that are hard to relate to in the modern era. One final point is that it's interesting to note that it begins with war and it ends with war.
Quite right.
And then all of the different various laws in between. Richard Elliott Friedman pointed out years ago in a work that he wrote that there are more than 100 laws in Deuteronomy that we see nowhere else in the Hebrew Bible, in the Pentateuch. So these are among those laws, many of the things that we covered today. And when they do appear somewhere else, they appear in different contexts, different terms, and so forth.
Quite
Clearly
right.
A different writer.
That is it. Dear viewers, we will be back this time next week. Shabbat Shalom, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great week. Ezra, take us on out.
That's all for this week's dive into Ki Tetze, where law meets life, and even the corners of your clothing carry covenantal weight. From rebellious sons to forgotten fringes, this portion shows us how every detail matters in building a holy society. If you enjoyed this episode of Torah Pearls, don't forget to like, share, and tell your fellow Bible nerds. We're not just reading the text, we're wrestling with it. See you next time.